Mayor and Council, just want to say that at this time I really appreciate the opportunity to bring this to you. I know it's been a very rough week and it would be easy to not do things like this, so I really appreciate it very much. When we've been talking about our master plan for a long time, and finally the board said, when will we be able to show the council some of the things that we're actually doing? So I'm very pleased today that we have someone that we have commissioned to do a marketing study, a design concept, and a complete business plan for the Hillside. And Roland, as our representative at the mayor, as our representative on the council, on our board, and Gabe have said that they would think this is an appropriate time for us to sort of tell a different story and to let you know what's going on. So I'm very pleased to introduce Chris Sutton, the CEO of Select Contracts, and he's going to tell you how far along there is for an actual plan. Thank you.
Mayor, council members, city staff, thank you very much for having me tonight. Our thoughts are with you over the trying period of the last week and continue to do so. Just going to talk you through a little bit about us. Obviously, we're standing up in front of you. I've met some of you before. But our company's been designing, building and operating all types of leisure, adventure and recreation projects for the past 41 years with our head office in Canada. So I've flown down tonight from there. We've got a big base in New Zealand and we've got offices in the UK as well. And we design, we build, and we operate bike parks, adventure parks, water parks, anything in the leisure and adventure world. And we do these projects all over the world. And so we've become really well renowned for creating active-based projects where we get kids off the sofas, away from their phones, and get them outside enjoying bikes, enjoying surfboards, getting them out into the natural environment, and really helping kids kind of progress into new sports, and also getting families to reconnect in some of these environments as well. A lot more about us than that, but just keeping it slim. As you can see, we haven't quite got the whole world covered in green yet, but we've done projects all over the world. So when we've come down and we've looked at this project, it's from a place of experience, and we believe we're adding some great value to the city in what we're proposing. We're working on many projects around the world right now, a lot of them downhill bike parks, a lot of adventure parks, again, all over the world. And so leads us on to Gilroy Adventure Park. So we first had a meeting here in October 2016 to discuss the possibility of a bike and adventure park on the hillside behind the Gilroy Gardens. And then we started working on a conceptual design and business planning process in 2017, which we concluded in early 2018 and came down and did our final presentation just to talk about what this could be. So the first thing we would have studied would have been the demographics. And so obviously key before you do any design and any planning and any business plans, you need to know we need to understand the local demographic. And so I won't go into too much detail tonight, but we've got around 6.5 million people within a 2-hour drive, which is an incredible demographic, of which you're looking at about 2.9% of that population being active mountain bikers. And then the younger demographic, there's more as well. So 3.7% of youth between 6 and 17 actually ride mountain bikes, and 3.3% of young adults aged between 18 and 24. So very, very strong demographic for this. It's certainly biking is a huge part of this local area, and so building something to help enhance cycle tourism and help provide facilities for your local residents is a given here. There are a few mountain bike parks around, none of which are year-round, and obviously none of which are as close as this is to that 6.5 million person demographic. And so for us to come in and see this, we're very enthused with what we've seen. And so like I said before, it's all about active participation, so getting people outside and doing skill-based activities. And so trying to help them improve in the sport, gain fitness, and have fun. And the most important thing is, whether you get someone coming once or 1,000 times to a park like this, the experience gets better every single time they come, and they get better at those sports every single time they come as well. So it's something that can really encourage a lot of repeat business and doesn't need a lot of reinvestment every single year, because the public enjoying themselves and getting better at the sport is that reinvestment. So what we're looking at doing is putting in mountain bike trails, so putting in a chairlift that goes from the base down by Gilroy Gardens up onto the summit, and that will provide an uplift for everybody to be able to go up and enjoy the amazing views from the top. And then we're looking at putting in some mountain bike trails, having some kids' adventure ropes courses up there, and then having a zip line tour coming all the way down. So those are the activities, and then obviously this is great for sightseers as well. So sightseers will be able to come up and see the views and go for hikes, and families can watch their kids on their bikes. People can go and participate in the zip lines and what have you. So if I've got this mouse, so Gilroy Gardens is here at the bottom, if you can see the screen. This is the big parking area. This is the dam that you've got, the dam that comes across. So we're looking at situating the base below the dam. And then the chairlift comes all the way up here to the summit, where we'd have some more activities, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we have a variety of green trails for everybody that can come and use it, blue trails as you progress, and then some more difficult black trails as well that are in the mix here. And then here are the 4 zip lines that I talked about. So this will be a zip line tour. Guests will be guided, and they'll learn more about the local flora, the local fauna, the local history of the area. There's an amazing canyon that comes down here as well, so beautiful land. So top station, first of all, it'll be the top of the zipline course, so guests will be able to get the chairlift to the top, and then if you can see in the middle picture on the right-hand side, there'll be dual zip lines where you can come down next to your family member or your friend, race each other down, and there's 4 of those that come back to the bottom. There'll be a low ropes course as well, so for those people that don't want to do anything as extreme, there's something pretty easy, like in the bottom right-hand corner. Hiking and sightseeing trails, so there'll be lots of hiking trails on top, so that'll be a 10-minute loop, 20-minute loop, hour loop, and have a variety of sightseeing trails that people can do. We're also looking at doing a trail that goes from the bottom to the top, so if people want to actually hike up the hill and then come down on the chairlift, then that's available at the same time. Mountaintop cafe and restaurant, that will be sitting at the top, that'll be open into the evening, serving food with the beautiful views. So that's the top station. You can see the chairlift coming in. You see the cafe overlooking Gilroy, low ropes course, and then the bike trails, hiking trails, and what have you. Then the base station. This will be a hub for biking. So we'd have rental and retail down here. The retail is more about selling equipment that people might use up on the mountain, like helmets and goggles and branded merchandise. Wouldn't really be looking at selling bikes because you've already got shops in town that do that. So we'd want to make sure that those shops get as much business as they can. The guest services will be at the bottom station, and then we'd have a cafe as well. So that'll be set back next to the chairlift with beautiful views of the mountain sides. People can see up the mountain. And that's the base station there. So there will be some VIP parking. Some disabled parking will sit in there as well, and then all of our deliveries would fit in this area too. So quite a condensed space, but you can see the zip line coming in and finishing on top of the dam, and then all the trails will come into the right-hand side behind the chairlift in here. So they'll all spill back into here, and then you'll be able to go back up the chairlift again. So that's a view. We took a drone up and got some photos of the hillside. So we're kind of sitting to the right-hand side of Gilroy Gardens right now. You can see the buildings below the dam. So again, fitting in with the local environment as much as possible. And one of the biggest things to note is that even though there's a big chairlift going up, it's very difficult to even see it because the trees are so high in there, it will be hidden significantly by the trees. And then the top station is right up here on top, so you'll be able to walk down and have some spectacular views over Gilroy at this point. So next steps, we're obviously in negotiations, or we've finished this phase right now, and the next phase is to discuss with the landowners whether to proceed with this project or not, and discuss whether that's going to be a lease with Gilroy Gardens or with the city, and taking it from there. Is there any questions on that?
Councilmember Peter Larome-Munoz.
So I had a question. So with regard to the proposed plan, to what extent did you consider how best to mitigate some of the negative impacts to the hillside, and what are some of the ideas to preserve that open space that makes that so attractive to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of environmental factors go into when you build a bike and adventure park like this. And so the environmental studies that go into it is the next phase, obviously a very expensive phase to go into. So that's why the next step would need some commitment to make sure that this project can go all the way through. When you're building the trails themselves, those are the biggest aspects that address your concerns. And so when you build the trails, you build the drainage into the trails straight away. So you're managing any runoff. Obviously, when it rains, you don't want the rain to be going down the trails, so it's providing the right drainage systems in place, and then also doing the silt screening as well. So when you're actually building the trails, you've got the silt screens up, so none of that runoff can flow into the rivers whilst you're building them. And then it's cutting down as fewer trees as possible. I mean, that area is beautiful. You look at it from the outside and think, oh, you're going to have to cut a load of trees down. But when you actually get in there and walk around, they're spaced so far apart, and they've just got this huge canopy. And so there'll be some, but minimal chopping of the trees as well.
And one quick follow-up to that. You know, I mountain bike myself, and so
Okay.
there are different widths of trails.
Yeah,
There's,
absolutely.
You know, there's a standard trail, which kind of everyone has in mind, where they have a couple people riding side by side, but then you also have single track as well. Can you give a sense to the audience as to what those different widths might look like?
True. So we would be designing this to cater to the whole demographic. So someone that's never been on a bike before, they'll be able to come in and we'll build those wider trails. We won't put two people next to each other, but it'll be about a 2.5, 3 meter wide trail. So nice and wide, nice easy berms where people can cycle down, and that's our green trail. So that'll be the one that's most ridden. And obviously it's all about getting the beginners to come to a facility like this and getting more people outside, getting more people on bikes. So there'll be one of those green trails. Obviously, because you're then snaking it down the mountain, it becomes the longest trail, so you push that off to one side, so that'll go off the left-hand side of the picture here. The next one are the blue trails, and so we'd have some technical blues, which are more single track, where people can come down, and then we'll have the blue flow trails as well. So the flow trails are where you then start to teach people how to jump their bikes and get a little tiny bit of air and some bigger berms, and so there'll be a couple of those in there. And then those progress into black technical trails, which are the black single track, and they've got more of a straight down approach. And then you've got the black flow trails, which again zigzag back and forwards, and the jumps are slightly bigger. So catering to the whole demographic to begin with, it's more on the beginner side. So maybe one green, 3 blues, and a couple of blacks. And then as your community and your guests start to progress, then you start building more blues and more blacks as they progress into that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. I have to go mountain biking sometime.
Thank you. Councilmember Tucker.
Thank you. I was trying to imagine where your base is going to be on the existing property. Is that the 36 acres that?
Can you
that
go
we
back? I
talked
think the
about?
other slide might,
So you've got the main entrance to Gilroy Gardens is above the screen. These are the Gilroy Gardens offices over here, and you have the whole hillside behind it. You with me there? So on this side of Gilroy Gardens, you've got the large car park, and you've got an access road that comes up into the car park. That access road actually continues up around this corner, and there's a base area just below the dam, and that's where the base area would be. We've looked at various locations of that, and trying to make it as easy as possible for the guests, whilst also there's obviously some concerns about a chairlift going up a mountainside, so that does hide that lift as best possible in there too. And the area is flat, it's lovely. And the lake's there, it's a gorgeous place to come in on the zip line, so it works really well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, anybody else? And I think you referenced 2 restaurants, right? A restaurant
Yeah.
down below, and then I think you're calling it a cafe up at top.
Yeah, so cafe restaurant, it'll be menu items. The bottom one will be more like, it's a permanent, but if you imagine like a food truck type menu, so it's quicker food, so when bikers come in, they can grab something and go, and parents can sit whilst they're watching their kids, and you can get a couple of drinks down there, and then also one at the top, which will be more for sightseers, so those are the ones that people will be sitting and enjoying the view from the top.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank you for coming and sharing this, because we've talked about it in the past, and it's hard to visualize exactly what you're talking about. And although now I have a better picture, I'm still not clear how I'm feeling about it, but I'm just letting you know that thank you. At least now I have a better vision. I'm not really sure how the community will take to this, but thank you for coming and sharing with us.
No, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, council member, and just, I think that was the entire point of tonight's presentation, just to make sure that the entire council kind of understands the same thing, and then we could talk a little bit more about it later. All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Barb, would you like to put a final point on anything?
If I could.
Finer point.
I know that we have often used the term hiking, biking for the area, and it's sort of been in in a way that if we could ever do that, wouldn't we like to have something like that in our community? And the board felt very, very strongly that the amount of work that's been done when we contracted select contracts to say, okay, how feasible is it? We will pay to have the study done and find out if you can put a truly world-class mountain bike facility appropriately into those hills. And we just felt very strongly, the board felt very strongly that we needed to have Chris present that to you so that you could ask, because that isn't our expertise, that if that is a use that is appropriate for that land, so that you would have an opportunity from the person who does this for a living to have that explained. I'm very proud of the board, and we have two board members here, Rob and Jane, because they are now looking at the property holistically. They're looking at it as 536 acres and not just the small Gilroy Gardens and what a tourism area on that side of town could be. And that's taken about 5 years to get there. So I just think it's really important for us to have an opportunity to show that to you and to open that dialogue. And I will get you as much information through Chris as I possibly can. I'm sure you will have other questions that come up at other times. We wanted for you to see it so you could ask those questions so that we can see if Chris can start getting investors, which is the final goal, of course.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay.